Hello and welcome to the TRBusiness YouTube channel. I'm here with Julian Diaz, who is the CEO of Dufry, and I believe this is almost a year to the day that we're conducting this video interview, a year on from 2020. So thank you once again for joining me on TRBusiness YouTube channel, and we're delighted to see you again, albeit in still quite challenging circumstances. Just to provide some context, Dufry reported narrowing losses in its half-year turnover in August, minus 25% to around $1.3 billion. And obviously at the time you conceded that the company is obviously not where it wants to be at the moment. And obviously Dufry can't accelerate its progress if stores aren't open and if passengers are still not traveling. But I do believe that this was due to be changing slightly by the end of August. And in the earnings call that I was on recently, I think you were expecting 70% of the store network to be reopened, with 85% of sales capacity, again, wants to be reopened. Can you tell us if this is now the case?
Thank you very much, Charlotte. Just before we go to the answers, let me thank you for this opportunity to participate in obviously this interview. I think it's the fourth time or the fourth year in a row that independently of events and circumstances, we have discussed about our views in travel retail and especially in difficult times. Thank you again for the invitation. Regarding obviously the expectations, at the time that we went to the public with half-year results, what we commented on is the intention of the company to open or reopen by the end of August of around 70% of the stores, with a sales capacity about 85% of the sales in 2019 generated by these locations. I am obviously now in the position to comment on that everything was in line with what we expect. In line with expectation, by the end of August, we have opened that, and we have seen, as expected in this time, gradual recovery in significant locations worldwide.
Mm-hmm. And in those significant locations, just remind our viewers which locations they are.
As you know, we cannot be specific because we don't disclose specific information before obviously the market, but in general, it's the same. They are the same than we commented on during the half-year results presentation. Is good acceleration in North America, including US, Mexico, and the Caribbean, especially in domestic flights, including also the duty-free in Mexico and in the Caribbean. Good acceleration also in Europe, with significant development in all the Mediterranean countries. As you know, one of the most important destinations worldwide. Still weak development during the summer in the UK. Good progress in Africa and Middle East. Very important slowdown in Asia because the reopening of the countries were subject to obviously different local government decisions that still provoke that the recovery from an international traveling point of view is very limited. And the other region or the other area that was slowly recovering, but slowly, is South America.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and we know that the situation is currently fluctuating. It's constantly fluctuating, and the vaccine rates are going up, but the infection rates are also going up, as well as hospitalization. I just wanted to gauge from yourself, with that constant threat upon us, do you see that traffic restrictions will continue to be eased? I know that the traffic light system in the UK is due to be scrapped at some point. And do you think that pending those restrictions, that international travel, the appetite for it is still there?
Yes, of course, there are different angles of this question. The first one is clear that the restrictions and lifting the restrictions, especially quarantines and limitations of traveling, is obviously having a big impact in whatever recovery. What we have seen over the past 3 months is in this direction, is in the way of lifting restrictions, and as a consequence, we have seen in most of the markets significant reopenings, except in Asia and in South America. What is the expectation from this point of view is difficult to say. Uncertainty depends obviously on decisions by government, but gradually we have seen, in especially June, better July and better August, a significant level of reopening in the countries I mentioned before. I guess that with the volume of vaccine, percentage of population vaccinated in some countries already obviously and the process, and the implementation gradually of better treatments are also important, obviously, in terms of, let's say, projecting or forecasting the evolution of traffic. The uncertainty is negative yet, but the future or the near future looks ahead, in my opinion, more optimistic from the level of vaccination or percentages of vaccination in the different countries where we are operating.
Mm-hmm. The recovery of international passenger traffic, I think a lot of people in the industry are looking to the IATA figures. Indeed, recovery, they forecast to be no sooner than 2024 international traffic. Do you think that is optimistic, or do you think that is, the picture is brighter than that?
It's difficult to say because this type of time horizon is very complex. You don't know. Really, nobody knows. I think international agencies are forecasting a full recovery of traffic by the year 2023, with international traffic recovering by the year 2024. I think in terms of recovery of the business, if we understand recovery of the business based in the volume of turnover and or generation of cash, in our case, equity free cash flow, should be around 2023. I think 2024 is also a possibility to confirm that international traffic has been fully recovered. But total number of passengers, and as you know, we have a significant volume of sales also in duty paid in the company, could happen around 2023. Again, with the limitation of volatilities, uncertainty that, to say something like that today is very, it's very aggressive because nobody knows.
There is, the uncertainty is too great at this point. Still, I appreciate that. And in the first half again of 2021, Dufry agreed and signed 495.4 million Swiss francs in MAG relief. Is the company pursuing further relief? And do you believe this goes far enough yet?
Yeah. First of all, let me start telling that most of our contracts are variable. In fact, the majority of our contracts today are based in variable. Variable means percentage on sales and or rent per passenger. And there are other, obviously, systems, but those are the most important ones. Second is we have tried, and this is something that we have repeated in the market in 2020 and now in 2021, that contracts subject to minimum annual guarantees are adapted to the new reality, especially when you don't know when and how the number of passengers is going to recover. This year, we have announced by half-year results, 495 million as already signed group of contracts that will release the minimum annual guarantee and will become variable based in percentage on sales and or rent per passenger. I think still there is room for improvement, but I think with this amount, we are very, let's say, confident that probably the risk associated with a minimum annual guarantee in 2021 is very limited. I think there are opportunities. The answer is yes, but I don't think that will be a huge change.
Well, certainly it's something that you've been very vocal about in the past, about the shared risks and rewards, moving away from the traditional concession model. And I guess, although we're in tragic circumstances, that could be described as somewhat of a silver lining in the whole process, moving towards a more beneficial concession model that benefits all. I'm sure that something that you may have would like to tell yourself if you've been able to peer into the future back 10 years ago, perhaps?
Mhm. I think we are all, I think, aligned with the idea that a more flexible rent structure will create in the middle long term more value for both for the landlords and for the operators. I am absolutely convinced that this is the way. The problem is how to show up that is a possibility to generate value through this process. Obviously, there are different alternatives and different ways of doing it. But in my opinion, this, let's say, period of pandemic has shown probably the most relevant event since the moment we have discussed about this type of things, is the alignment of interest between landlords, suppliers, and operators in order to create a sustainable business. And I am very pleased to say that in most of the cases, we have agreed with the airports and with other landlords, not only with airports, to adapt the future of the sustainability of the business to more viable compensation in the short term. This is something that is already tested. I hope that will be also confirmed that with this type of formula, every part of the equation could maximize the obviously the potential of income, basically based in spend per passenger. What is going to happen after the pandemic? This is something that, in my view, is a very important moment, because we need to really use this opportunity for discussing case by case with obviously not all the landlords, because as I said, most of our contracts are viable today. But with the contracts that are more based in a minimum annual guarantee compensation, is the right time to really renegotiate and find formulas that will lead to a better income for the landlord, but also a more sustainable business for the operator. What these formulas are, as I said, there are many. Variable is one, but there is also variability with number of passengers. There is also the possibility to share the view of how to split the profitability of the business. I don't want to be more specific, because obviously this is part of the negotiation process and the value that we identified in these relationships. But I am still, and probably today I'm more convinced that these formulas are very valid. The only thing we need is really understand and provide the landlords with the information and the trust that will change the formula today. Is going to happen tomorrow? I don't think so. But I think in the middle, long term, what happened with the pandemic should be a good example of how to share these views of creating a sustainable business.
One of the unfortunate consequences of the pandemic was the fact that Dufry, much like many in the travel and hospitality industries, had to reduce the workforce significantly. And one of my questions was, has Dufry been able to rehire any of these members of staff as a consequence of Dufry reporting that they had narrowed their losses?
Okay, there are two things here. One is what is going to happen in the future, and the other thing, what is happening exactly right now. What we are doing is an analysis, location by location, of what is the level of workforce that we need in each of the locations, including the headquarters. And this is in parallel with the recovery of the business. Obviously, this type of approach requires also a certain level of assumptions when you are talking about the reopening in the future, because both cannot be at the same time. We need to put the resources before the reopening. In our case, we have been always very concerned about the human resources. I think this is probably the most difficult decision when you have to restructure a business with the situation we had in 2020. But what we have done is two things. First of all, is to define within obviously the new way of working that we have implemented starting in 2020, what could be the most suitable organization in terms of positions, number of people, etc. This is a plan that is perfectly defined. The second thing is we prepared a list of possible reincorporation in the company of people that have been at that time affected because of the restructuring. And gradually what we have done is calling these people that are Dufry's former employees for reinitiating again the relationship with Dufry. I think this is in parallel, this is going in parallel, and I hope that during the next months we will hire most of the people that could be hired, because obviously there is always a percentage of people that will not be hired again, because this is part of the restructuring that we have done in order to adapt the company to the new reality. As probably you know, I have communicated to the market that there are around 400 million structural changes that will be maintained in the future, independently of the volume of sales. Around 280 million in personal expenses and 120 million in operational expenses. This 280 million is very sadly, but represents a lot of people. Mm-hmm. But these people are obviously not going to be hired again. Mm-hmm. This is part of what I commented on regarding the restructuring. In general, what we try is to hire again people that have been in the company for a long time, and we would like to maintain most of them.
Indeed, it's some very, very difficult decisions to be made, and not an easy position for anybody to be in at the moment. I just have just one more question for you on 2021 as a whole. I asked you the same question in 2020, and I hope there might be a slightly different answer to that one we asked before. If you could encapsulate 2021 thus far with just one phrase or a few words, what would they be?
I think it's very difficult, but the most important for us is reopening with a very high level of uncertainty. And I think in these two words, you can identify how we feel. Is we cannot reopen everything at the same time because it's very difficult, and you cannot obviously go to the same position that we had in 2019 until we know exactly how the traffic and how the number of passengers is going to be. But at the same time, in parallel, you know, you cannot fail in the reopening because passengers are going through and you cannot be closed down in the shops. This is the type of, in my opinion, very difficult decision process that companies like we are, and especially in case of Dufry, that we are operating in 65 countries. Imagine that the world is not recovering in the different regions at the same speed. Mm-hmm. And we need to accelerate in some places, to slow down in other places, to open, to reopen. This is an exercise of obviously a lot of research, a lot of information, and a lot of information that should be based in really data. And in the data has been always historically in travel retail very important, but in this specific moment in time is essential in order to really that we don't fail and we don't go to the same position we used to be in 2019 in terms of cost structure until every operation is reopened.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for very succinctly putting that. And that brings us to the end of our video interview today. Thanks, Julian, so much for joining us. And I wish you all the best for the future, and hope to see you in face to face for one as soon as we can all meet in person again.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. Again, thank you for your support. I think you know what you are doing is very important, is to really share information and feelings about what is going on today in the travel retail, what in my view is more relevant than ever because we don't have physical, you know, relationships or physical contact. Thank you, and see you soon.
Thank you. An absolute pleasure as always.